Have you ever noticed how much energy we waste trying to prove something to others? We want to silence the critics, quiet the doubters, and win the approval of people who may not even care about our growth. But here's the truth. The real victory in life doesn't come from proving them wrong. It comes from proving yourself right. Every time you set a goal, you'll hear the whispers of doubt. Sometimes from others, sometimes from within. The easy trap is to turn your journey into a battle against what they said. They said I couldn't do it, so I will. That fire might get you started, but it will never sustain you. Why? Because the moment the critics fall silent, so does your motivation. But when you shift the focus, when you say, I'm not here to prove anyone wrong. I'm here to prove myself right, everything changes. You're no longer playing someone else's game. You're playing your own. Proving yourself right means living up to your potential, keeping the promises you make to yourself, and walking with integrity. It means that when you set out to accomplish something, you do it not for applause, not for recognition, not for revenge, but because deep inside you know you are capable. Think of it this way: every day, you are writing your own contract with your future. Every effort you put in is a down payment on that promise. And when you prove yourself right, you're cashing in on the belief you had when no one else saw it. The truth is, people will come and go. Opinions will shift like the wind. Today they doubt you, tomorrow they admire you, and the next day they forget you. But you will live with yourself every single day of your life. So whose approval really matters most? Yours. Now, here's the beautiful part. When you prove yourself right, you end up proving the doubters wrong anyway. But that's just a byproduct, not the goal. The goal is to live in alignment with your purpose, to push beyond your own limits, and to build a life that reflects your deepest values. So stop chasing shadows of approval. Stop letting the voices of others control your direction. Instead, wake up each morning with one question: what can I do today to prove to myself that I'm moving toward the person I was meant to be? Because in the end, the greatest satisfaction isn't hearing others say, you did it. It's looking in the mirror and knowing, I did it. And I always knew I could. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that the loudest motivation comes from the critics. We hear someone say, you'll never make it, or you don't have what it takes, and suddenly our pride stirs. We want to fight back, to prove them wrong, to show them that their judgment doesn't define us. And yes, sometimes that spark gets us moving. But if all your energy is spent trying to silence others, you'll never truly discover your own voice. You see, critics will always exist. That's a fact of life. No matter what you do, there will always be someone who thinks you're doing it wrong. And if you let them set the agenda, you're handing over the steering wheel of your life. They become the reason you rise in the morning, the reason you work late into the night. But what happens when the critic disappears? What happens when there's no one left to challenge you? If your fuel source is only their doubt, then your fire dies as soon as they fall silent. That's why you must shift your perspective. Don't live to silence the critics. Live to strengthen your own voice. Your voice is the compass inside you that says, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and this is where I'm going. When you build that voice, you no longer depend on the applause or the criticism. You walk with confidence because you're not reacting, you're creating. Think about it like this: imagine a musician who only plays songs to please the critics. They'll chase trends, shift their sound, and bend themselves into shapes that don't fit their soul. They may gain approval for a time, but they'll lose the authenticity that made their music worth hearing in the first place. But when that musician strengthens their own voice, when they play from a place of truth, something powerful happens. People can feel it. The sound resonates deeper because it's not about proving anything. It's about expressing everything. The same applies to your life. You're not here to win an argument with doubters. You're here to discover your own rhythm, to live a life so true that no critic can shake it. Strengthening your voice means knowing what you believe, clarifying your values, and standing firm in your convictions. It means you don't get blown around by every opinion. Instead, you become anchored. And here's the beauty: when you live from that place of inner strength, the critics lose their power. Their words may still reach your ears, but they won't penetrate your heart. You'll nod, maybe even smile, but then you'll keep walking in your direction. Why? Because your voice is louder inside than theirs is outside. Let me give you an image at a lighthouse on the shore during a storm. The waves crash, the winds roar, and ships struggle in the sea. But the lighthouse doesn't panic. It doesn't argue with the storm. It simply shines. It strengthens its light, and by doing so, it guides others safely through the chaos. That's what happens when you live to strengthen your own voice. You don't waste time debating the storm, you shine. The truth is, the critics are not your enemy. They're your reminder. They remind you that the world is watching, but they also remind you to check where your energy is going. Is it being wasted trying to quiet their voices, or is it being invested in amplifying your own? Because one path leads to exhaustion, the other leads to empowerment. So ask yourself today, am I chasing the silence of my critics, or am I building the strength of my voice? One makes you a prisoner, the other makes you free. Don't hand over the pen of your life story to people who don't even know your vision. Don't let the noise outside drown out the clarity inside. Live to strengthen your own voice, and you'll discover something extraordinary. When your voice grows strong enough, you won't need to prove anything at all. The life you live will be proof enough. One of the most dangerous illusions we chase in life is the belief that approval from others will make us complete. We work harder, dress better, talk louder, and perform bigger, all in hopes that someone will notice, clap their hands, and give us their stamp of approval. And when we finally get it, it feels good, doesn't it? For a moment, we feel seen, validated, and affirmed. But here's the truth that approval doesn't last. It fades faster than we think. The applause stops, the compliments disappear, and the people who once praised us move on with their lives. And then we're left standing alone, wondering, what now? Who am I when no one's clapping? That's why the greatest approval you can ever earn is the approval you give yourself. External approval is temporary, but self-approval stays with you forever. Think about it this way. Imagine you achieve something big, a promotion, an award, a recognition in your field. People congratulate you, they celebrate you, they tell you how proud they are. But give it a few days, a few weeks, maybe a few months, and suddenly their lives demand their attention again. That once bright spotlight turns to someone else. If your sense of worth was built only on their recognition, you'll feel empty again. But if your sense of worth comes from within, if you know in your heart, I did the best I could, I kept my word, I lived up to my values, then no one can take that away from you. That feeling doesn't fade with time. That's the kind of approval that carries you through every season of life. You see, external approval is like a sugar rush. It spikes your energy for a little while, but then it crashes. Self-approval, however, is like healthy nourishment. It sustains you, strengthens you, and gives you lasting energy for the journey ahead. The question is, how do you build that self-approval? You build it by living in alignment with your principles. You build it by keeping the promises you make to yourself. You build it every time you do what's right, even when nobody's watching, even when nobody will clap for you. Let me give you an example. Suppose you wake up early to exercise and nobody notices. Suppose you work late on a project and nobody thanks you. Suppose you spend hours practicing your craft and nobody applauds. From the outside, it looks like there's no reward. But inside, something powerful is happening. You're earning your own respect. You're proving to yourself that you are disciplined, that you are committed, and that you are capable. That's worth more than 1,000 compliments. Here's something important. Self-approval doesn't mean arrogance. It doesn't mean walking around saying, I don't care what anybody thinks. It simply means you're no longer dependent on what they think. You can enjoy their praise when it comes, but you don't collapse when it's absent. You can hear criticism without losing your balance because your foundation isn't built on their opinions. Life is full of seasons. There will be times when the crowd celebrates you, and there will be times when you feel invisible. If your joy depends on the crowd, you'll live on an emotional roller coaster, up when they love you, down when they don't. But if your joy comes from your own approval, from the quiet satisfaction of knowing you did what was right, then you remain steady no matter what. Think about the people you admire most, not the ones who chase trends, but the ones who seem rooted, grounded, unshakable. What makes them that way? It's not that everyone always praises them. It's that they've learned to approve of themselves. They live according to an inner compass, not an outer scoreboard. So let me ask you, whose approval are you chasing today? Are you waiting for someone else to tell you you're good enough? Or are you willing to look in the mirror and know that your effort, your discipline, your honesty, and your consistency are enough? Because here's the secret: when you give yourself approval, when you build your life on that solid foundation, you not only free yourself from dependence on others, you also attract genuine respect. People sense when someone doesn't need their applause. They sense when someone lives with integrity, and ironically, that's when the approval of others comes naturally. But by then, you don't need it. You're already whole. So remember, this external approval is a fleeting gift. Self-approval is a lasting treasure. Choose the treasure. Build your life in a way that When you put your head on the pillow at night, you can say with peace, I live true to myself today. That's an applause you'll hear for the rest of your life. Every one of us has a desire to be seen, to be appreciated, and to be valued. There's nothing wrong with that. It's human nature. But here's where the trap begins, when our worth starts depending on whether or not other people approve of us. That's when life becomes a prison and the jailers are their opinions. Think about it. If you spend your days constantly wondering, what will they think if I do this? Will they approve of me if I try that? Will they respect me if I fail? Then you're not truly free. You're living in a cage, moving only as far as their approval allows you to. Your creativity is limited. Your decisions are restrained. Your life becomes a performance, not a journey. The danger is that people's opinions are fickle. They change like the wind. One day, they'll cheer you on. The next day, they'll question your motives. Today, they'll admire your boldness. Tomorrow, they'll call you reckless. If you tie your identity to their ever-shifting thoughts, you'll never know who you really are. You'll always be chasing, but never arriving. It's like being an actor on stage, but the script keeps changing based on the crowd's mood. You never know your lines because you're always waiting for direction from the audience. That's exhausting. And the tragedy is, while you're busy playing to their applause, you forget to play the role you were born for. Now, don't misunderstand me. Feedback has value. Wise counsel, honest correction, and genuine encouragement are important. But there's a difference between listening to feedback and living for validation. Feedback can help you grow. Validation, when it becomes your lifeline, can control you. The truth is, you can't build a strong life on borrowed approval. It's too unstable. It's like trying to build a house on shifting sand. The foundation will always collapse. The only stable ground is when you know your values, your goals, and your worth, regardless of what others say. When you stop chasing validation, something powerful happens. You take back your freedom. You're no longer chained to their expectations. You can make bold choices because you're not asking for permission. You can step into new arenas because you're not worried about being judged. And even when you stumble, you can rise again because your sense of worth doesn't collapse with the criticism. Let me give you an example. Imagine a young writer who spends years writing stories. But every time she shows her work, she waits desperately for someone to say, "This is amazing." If they praise her, she keeps writing. If they criticize her, she stops. That writer is not free. She is a prisoner of opinions. Now compare her to another writer who says, "I write because it's my calling. I write because it's my voice. Whether people praise me or not, I will keep going." That second writer is free, and freedom is what allows creativity to flourish. This doesn't only apply to careers or talents. It applies to relationships too. How many people live their entire lives trying to win the approval of friends, family, or society? They choose their career not because they love it, but because it earns them applause. They buy things not because they need them, but because it impresses others. And at the end of the day, they feel empty because they've built a life for everyone but themselves. That's why chasing validation is such a dangerous prison. The bars are invisible, but they are real. And the key to freedom isn't in someone else's hand, it's in yours. So how do you unlock the door? You do it by making a decision. I will no longer measure my worth by the applause or criticism of others. I will measure my worth by the integrity of my actions, the strength of my character, and the commitment to my own path. When you live that way, you discover peace. You no longer fear judgment. Because you're not living for the judges, you no longer crave constant reassurance, because you already carry assurance within yourself. And the irony is, when you stop chasing validation, you often end up earning genuine respect. Why? Because people admire those who live with authenticity and courage. So here's the choice. Do you want to be free, or do you want to be a prisoner? If you want freedom, stop handing the keys of your life to others. Stop chasing validation. Build your life on principles, not applause. Because in the end, their opinions will come and go, but your own sense of self will stay with you forever. When most people think of success, they picture trophies, awards, applause, and recognition. They see success as something visible, something the world can measure. But the truth is, success begins long before the world notices. It begins in the quiet, private moments when you either keep or break the promises you make to yourself. Think about it. How many times have you told yourself, "I'll start tomorrow," only to let tomorrow slide into next week, the next month, and then into never? How many times have you set a goal, maybe to wake up early, to save money, to exercise, or to learn a new skill, and then broken that agreement with yourself? Every time that happens, you weaken your confidence. You teach yourself that your word doesn't carry weight. And if your word doesn't carry weight with you, how can it ever carry weight with others? True success isn't about how many people believe in you. It's about how much you believe in yourself. And that belief is built on promises kept. When you follow through on the commitments you make to yourself, you build trust. And that trust becomes the foundation for everything else in your life. Let me give you an example. Imagine you have a close friend who constantly says, "I'll be there for you," but never shows up. How long before you stop believing them? How long before their words lose all meaning? Now think about yourself. If you say, "I'll do it," but never do, you become that unreliable friend to yourself. And when you stop believing in yourself, motivation disappears, discipline weakens, and dreams fade away. On the other hand, every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you strengthen your character. You prove to yourself that your word matters. That proof creates momentum, and momentum builds confidence. That's the invisible engine behind true success. Here's the key: the size of the promise doesn't matter as much as the consistency of keeping it. If you tell yourself you'll wake up 10 minutes earlier and you follow through, you've won. If you tell yourself you'll read a few pages each night and you do it, you've won. Those small victories add up. They form a track record of self-trust, and that track record becomes unstoppable. Success isn't built in giant leaps, it's built in daily follow-through. It's not about grand declarations, it's about quiet consistency. You don't have to prove anything to the world. You have to prove to yourself that when you say you will, you do. Think about the most disciplined, respected people in history. They weren't necessarily the loudest or the flashiest. What set them apart was that they kept promises to their vision, to their principles, and most importantly, to themselves. That's why they could lead others. People trust leaders who first trust themselves. And here's the beautiful part. When you learn to keep promises to yourself, you don't just gain success, you gain freedom. You no longer live in guilt, regret, or excuses. You walk with confidence because you know your actions align with your words. That alignment creates peace. Now, here's a warning. Keeping promises to yourself isn't easy. The world will tempt you with shortcuts, distractions, and excuses. The voice in your head will whisper, "It doesn't matter, no one's watching." But that's the test. Because when no one else is watching, you are, and the way you act in private determines the strength you carry in public. So here's the challenge: don't make promises lightly. Make fewer promises, but make stronger ones. And once you commit, follow through. No matter how small, no matter how inconvenient. Because every kept promise builds a bridge between who you are now and who you are meant to be. At the end of the day, success isn't measured by how many people applauded you. It's measured by how many nights you can lay your head on the pillow with the quiet satisfaction of knowing, "I did what I said I would do." That's success. That's integrity. That's power. So stop chasing success out there. Start building it in here by keeping your word to yourself. Do that consistently and the rest will follow. There's something about doubt that lights a spark in us. Someone says, "You'll never make it," and instantly, something inside wants to rise up and fight back. We picture the moment of triumph when we can look them in the eye and say, "See, I told you I could." That energy is powerful. It can get us started, it can push us through the first obstacles, and it can even fuel us to a certain level of achievement. But here's the problem: that fire doesn't last. Once you've proven them wrong, the motivation disappears. The question becomes, now what? You see, the fire of proving others wrong burns out fast. It's temporary fuel, and temporary fuel can't sustain a lifelong journey. The only fire that lasts is the fire of self-belief. When you believe deeply in your own potential, when you trust your own vision, and when you commit to your own values, the energy you draw from that source is limitless. It doesn't run out because it isn't tied to someone else's opinion. It's tied to your purpose. Think about it this way: if your main drive is to prove someone wrong, your success will always depend on them. You'll always need a critic, a doubter, or a skeptic in your corner to keep you moving. But do you really want to hand over that much power to people who don't believe in you? Do you really want your destiny tied to their disbelief? That's a dangerous way to live. Now, contrast that with someone who's fueled by self-belief. They wake up in the morning not because someone doubted them, but because they know they're capable of more. They push through challenges, not because they want to silence a voice outside, but because they want to honor the voice inside. That's the kind of fire that doesn't burn out. It grows brighter over time. Let me give you an example. Imagine two runners training for a marathon. The first one is motivated because someone once told him he couldn't do it, Every step he takes, he hears that voice and wants to prove it wrong. The second runner is motivated by something different. She runs because she believes in the discipline, the health, and the joy it brings her. Now ask yourself, which runner is more likely to keep running long after the race is over? The one fueled by temporary anger or the one fueled by lasting belief? That's the difference. Proving others wrong might get you through one race, but self-belief can carry you through a lifetime of growth. And here's something important. Self-belief doesn't mean you never doubt yourself. It doesn't mean you walk around with perfect confidence every single day. It simply means that deep down, you trust that you are capable of becoming more, and you're willing to keep showing up for yourself. That's what makes it lasting. The fire of self-belief is like a steady flame. It might not flare up as dramatically as the fire of anger or revenge, but it's dependable. It stays with you in the quiet mornings when no one's watching. It stays with you during setbacks when no one's cheering. It stays with you long after the critics have forgotten your name. That's why it lasts. It isn't tied to anyone else. Here's the irony. When you live fueled by self-belief, you often end up proving others wrong anyway. But this time, it's not the goal. It's just a byproduct. And by then, it doesn't even matter because you've already moved beyond needing their validation. So let me ask you, what's fueling you right now? Are you still burning on the temporary spark of someone else's doubt? Or are you tapping into the steady fire of your own belief? One will fizzle out quickly, leaving you empty once the critics go silent. The other will sustain you through every season of your life. The choice is yours. You can spend your energy chasing down the shadows of other people's opinions, or you can build your own light that shines regardless of who's watching. Remember this, the fire of proving others wrong will push you for a moment, but the fire of self-belief will carry you for a lifetime. And in the end, it's not about what you prove to them, it's about what you prove to yourself.